My name, if you don't know me, is Cheryl Blair. I am a certified health and lifestyle coach, also the founder of Above the Horizon Wellness. I help motivate people overcome stress, and this is what I'm here to do. And that's where Tanya comes in. I've had some pretty serious financial stresses in my life, but one in particular, when my daughter was about 6 months old and her dad got hurt at work very badly that he could not go to work. So we did have some coverage from compensation, but you have to wait and they have to do their investigation. It was very close to Christmas time, very close to Christmas time. And we were fairly still newlyweds. We were only married a couple years. And I had quit my job to help raise our daughter, stay-at-home mom. And that worked out very well in that stint until he was off of work. We had nothing coming in. We couldn't even afford a box of Kraft dinner. I did not know what we were going to do. And there was this stigma, don't say anything, right? Don't say nothing at all. I didn't know where we were going to get any money from to feed each other. Never mind, it was Christmas time. So we ended up, a family member that worked at the same place that my husband at the time was working, he went to the company and asked the company, if there was any help. So the company ended up giving us an advancement. That saved us. I don't know what we would have done without that. It was very, very, very stressful and scary. And education would have been great if we would have had it. So if I would have known what I know now, what Tanya's taught me and what I've learned on my own through a little bit of research on my own, I think I would have been much better off. So that being said, I just want to introduce one of my very new friends here in Campbell River. I met her from a mutual friend, the first lady I met here in Campbell River, one of my very good friends. So I met Tanya through her. Then again, we built a relationship through Talking the Walk, our Toastmasters group. And this is where I got to know a lot about Tanya. I'm so grateful she's in my life. So Tanya, please tell us all about you.
Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be live here on Facebook for the very first time, for me anyway. And I want to thank Cheryl for inviting me to have this conversation. And as Cheryl just shared with you, she has a money story. We all have money stories. And I'd like to introduce myself first by saying that I am a personal finance educator and expert money coach. And I started my company, FinSmart, in June of 2019. So I'm coming up to 1 year anniversary and a lot has happened then, but how did I get here? Well, I too have a money story and it actually takes place 20 years ago when I was 32 years old. And like a lot of people, it takes a significant life event, like a job loss, divorce, or in the case of today, the pandemic, it takes a significant life event to put us in a place of financial stress and vulnerability. And this is a very uncomfortable, scary position to be. And that's where I was 20 years ago when I was in fact going through job loss and divorce in the same week. And within a few months of this happening, the dot-com crash took place. And so that was an economic shock. So I was in an incredibly vulnerable position. The money was running out. I asked my father if he would lend me, like literally lend me $5,000 just to get through to the next couple months. And he refused. Even though he is a man of significant means, he wanted to basically teach me a lesson. And I was desperate. So my mother, who I'm so grateful to celebrate this weekend, along with all of our great mothers, she actually had to cash in some RRSPs to help me out. And my mother was a very minimal means, and so this was hard for her. But of course, I paid her back 10 times over the years. But that's what started my journey to financial wellness, is going from a very vulnerable position. And I can proudly say that, less than 20 years later, I was able to learn, develop my skill, and eventually become financial independent before I turned 50. And so FinSmart is my encore career. And I am absolutely passionate about personal finance. And I'm personally on a mission now to help improve people's financial wellness so that they can reduce financial stress and eventually get on the path to financial independence. So before we get further, I do want to take a moment quickly, Cheryl, if I can, to just share the difference between a financial counselor or a money coach and a financial advisor. That can be confusing. And of course, I believe, being a money coach is a relatively new profession. But what I want to share with you is that as a money coach, I take a very holistic approach to your financial wellness. My goal in a simple term is to get your financial house in order, provide you with the education and best practice so that you can build initial wealth and achieve some of your important life goals. From there, a financial advisor, on the other hand, they take that initial wealth that you build and invest it, and then build on that in a long-term basis. So in many ways, a money coach and a financial advisor are very complementary, and a lot of you will eventually need the services of both of our skill sets. And the only other thing I want to say is that there's a key difference between a money coach and a financial advisor. And that is, as a money coach, I don't sell or represent any financial products or financial institutions. I operate, very much in my client's best interest. And that is what drives me to give you the best counsel and, courses of action for your life. So hopefully that provides some clarity.
Well, thank you, Tanya, for that. That sure clarifies a lot of things for me. And I can see passion, right? I can see a lot of passion about where Tanya's coming from. Same as what I do. I have a lot of passion in health and wellness. There's lots and lots of research, and there's lots and lots of resources that we have found to help us, not to mention all the education behind us. So Tanya, this is just a big one for me, but I just want to know, tell us about the concept of financial wellness and how does it fit in our overall health?
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for again having this conversation, because where we are today is money. Talking about money is really the final taboo. And by having this conversation today, we are starting to help raise the level of consciousness, understanding, and conversation about financial health. It's just like we have done with mental health. We need to reduce the stigma, the shame, and the silence when it comes to our money. So wellness overall is a three-legged stool. It includes physical health, mental health, and financial health. And the reason I'm putting forward this messaging around financial health is key to our overall wellness is because it can be very much linked to both our physical and mental health. So in basic terms, mental health, financial stress obviously creates stress, anxiety, depression. And financial stress and worry affects everyone across all income levels and age groups. Finances can also impact our physical health. Thinking about if you lose sleep over financial worries, well, that's going to lead to fatigue. On another extreme, if you don't have the financial means for proper nutrition and you're not eating well, that of course leads to physical problems. We also know substance abuse often is a coping mechanism for stress and problems. And you as a health coach are very well aware that long-term intense stress can lead to some serious health problems. So financial wellness is something we all need to pay attention to, particularly in today's situation. And I want to define it for you. There's, a number of ways that you can define financial health, but really it incorporates 4 distinct determinants. First of all, financial wellness is a state of being in good financial health when an individual, number 1, has control over their day-to-day and month-to-month expenses. Number 2, they have the capacity to absorb a financial shock, such as a divorce, job loss. Number 3, financial wellness is when you are on track to meet your financial goals. And those are goals that you have in the short, medium, and long term. And financial wellness is also when you have the ability to make choices that allow you to enjoy your life and seize opportunity. And I think that's really important because I can share some stories on that, maybe further on in this conversation. But I just want to say that financial wellness will evolve as our circumstances change. And it really is on a continuum from financially vulnerable to financially coping to being financially healthy. So it's important to recognize where we are. Hopefully that clears up a little bit about that. But the most obvious sign of financial health is your level of financial stress.
Thank you, Tanya. Yes, definitely. The financial stress is the opposite of financial wellness, right? Is there anything more that you can elaborate about that? Or, like I find just for myself, if it's just like it's that other leg of the stool, like everything else is going good, like my physical and my mental and all that's good, but there might be a financial, so it's just like it's off balance. We're tipped over to the other side. Is there anything else that you would like to elaborate on that?
Well, let me just say that we are not alone. Financial matters or money challenges have been cited as the biggest cause of stress. In fact, they are more cited than any other life stressor combined. So a recent survey from PricewaterhouseCoopers showed that 59% of those people surveyed were experiencing financial stress versus 15% for their job, 12% for their relationships, 10% for their health concerns, and 4% other reasons. So almost 60% of people cited financial matters as their top cause of stress. And what's really sad about that, Cheryl, is that financial stress creates a lot of fear, shame, overwhelm, and confusion. And a lot of it becomes hidden, behind four walls. They don't want to talk about it. They want to suffer, they suffer in silence. And if you're living alone, financial stress obviously can live inside your mind for months, years, and for some people, maybe even decades. We know a lot of people have been living paycheck to paycheck for a very long time. I don't even know what the stats are today, given our current circumstances, but I can say that financial stress is probably going to become its own epidemic in our society. And that's why I really want to get this word out about how can we improve our financial wellness. And again, I might be able to touch on this later, but women are particularly vulnerable when it comes to their financial wellness. And in fact, a lot of employers today, leading employers, are taking a hard look at how they can participate in this and improve financial wellness in the workplace.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. I see we're rolling in with some questions there. We'll get to them, you guys, in a couple minutes. There's a lot to touch. We don't have a lot of time, but please chime in and just let us know where you're from, because I see there's quite a few people on here, and I'd just like to know where you guys are all coming in from. I see Jason's on there. He gives me a high five. I see a few people on there watching. So if you could just let me know, just say I'm calling in from wherever, Ontario or, overseas or wherever, that'd be great. We would love to know and where you're chiming in from, or maybe you're watching the recording and that's great too. So please let us know what's going on there with you guys. And if you have any questions, I'll keep an eyeball on the feed there so we know. Yeah, this is juicy stuff. Thank you, Tanya. What are some best things we can do to improve this financial wellness? I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel and you have the information for us. Can you please share that?
Again, excellent question, Cheryl. And I think this will kind of summarize, what we wanted to cover today, because we could go on for hours and hours about this topic, because it really does encompass so many elements of our life. But what I can say, as in the context of financial wellness, there are some things that we can't control and there's some things that we can control. So I just want to make a note, we can't control government policy around taxation, around benefits. We can't control the economy. Of course, we are living through one of the biggest financial shocks in modern history, and we can't control this. But what we can control when it comes to our finances is our mindset, our knowledge, and our behavior. And each of these things can have an immediate impact on our financial wellness. And so I just want to take a moment to double click on each of these, and then we can open up to questions. But the first thing is your money mindset. How you think, feel, and behave with money is a really main determinant in your financial wellness. And many people develop their money mindset in their childhood. And that can be for the good or the worst of your future financial wellness. So with my company FinSmart, that's one of the things that I am very much focused on, is creating what I call the FinSmart money mindset. And this is truly what we need in the 21st century when we consider the significance of financial stress in our lives. The other thing we can control is our knowledge. I think one of the biggest ironies, and in fact it becomes a tragedy when you consider today, is that we all learn how to make money. Think of it, we spend 40, 60 hours a week making money, but the irony is we don't learn how to manage money. How many hours a week do you spend managing your money or learning about money? I mean, this is a question we all have to ask ourselves. Because what I want to, again, help people realize is that mastering your money is a skill. It's a life skill. And it's very similar if you consider learning how to play a musical instrument, learning how to drive, how to swim, how to learn a second language. We cannot learn any of these things just naturally. We have to put in the time, the effort, the discipline. And a lot of times we need the support of an expert or a teacher to help us develop that skill. The other thing I want to mention about knowledge, and what I consider one of the first steps on the FinSmart journey when I'm working with clients, is I call it clarity. And we need to become financially aware. How many times do I ask, people, okay, so what's your interest rate on your mortgage? What's the balance on your loan? When do you think you're going to be, having that debt eliminated? So many people don't know the state of their finances. And ultimately, you are your own best financial advisor. And so what I want to impress upon people is that the more you learn, the more competent you become. And the more competent you become, the more confidence you have in your finances. So it's this beautiful loop. And, it's actually a psychological principle called the confidence loop. So the more you learn, the more confident you become and the better decisions you make. So I do encourage everyone to increase their knowledge around their personal finances. And the last thing I want to mention in terms of how you can improve your financial wellness and what you can control is, of course, your behavior. And so if you go to my website, you can actually sign up for what I have as called the 10 steps to financial wellness. I just want to mention two. And again, they're not rocket science. I'm not creating, an epiphany here. What I'm trying to share with you is that if you can make some really small steps when it comes to your finances, you will then create continuous improvement over time. And like myself, 18 years later, I now have achieved, a level of financial independence, I never even thought would be possible. So the first thing when it comes to your behavior is you need to tell your money where to go. So you need to have a budget. And this is what absolutely changed my life. And I at FinSmart have a very unique budgeting system based on your cash flow, what's coming in, what's going out. So many people rely on mental accounting. That will not work to get you where you need to be, particularly in the long term. And the last thing I want to share about your behavior is your savings behavior. And the first thing that all of us have to have is an emergency fund. You know, you can call it what you like, but it needs to be at least, 6 months of living expenses saved in accessible cash. And I can tell you, if you create yourself an emergency fund, just start. I'm just saying, get up to that 6 months, get up to that $10,000 marker, saying, this one thing will reduce your financial stress by 50%. I promise. Just having that backing will allow you to get through a significant life event or, a personal crisis. And again, save your financial wellness. So we all know life happens. We're going to have significant life events and the unexpected. So having that emergency fund is going to be a real savior in a time of need.
Wow, that's a lot, Tanya. Thank you. Blown away. Just blown away. Thank you so much for your insight. Whoa. But yeah, if I would have known way back when what you're just telling me now, there wouldn't have been those financial stresses. And yes, you carry them on. You carry them your whole life. Any stresses, you carry them. So you need to know how and feel safe, right? Having that financial backing makes you feel safe. Okay, we've got a couple questions, and I see there's one on the thread. I've also got a couple from people that have sent me in some questions, but we'll get to Martin's question. How about that? What is the difference between women's financial health and men's financial health, Tanya?
Well, thank you, Marnie, for asking that question, because I alluded to it earlier, and women are particularly more vulnerable. And it just comes down to the reality that women, number one, continue to suffer pay disparity. We are still making, on average, 80% of men in the workplace. The other impact on our financial wellness is based on the fact that we are still the primary caregivers. So we're taking a lot of time outside of the workforce to care for children and elderly parents. So that means we are not saving as much, we're not earning as much because we're away from work. The third most important factor that impacts financial wellness for women is that we live longer. And we're actually all living much longer, but women in particular will live 4.5 years longer than men. And one of the stats I read is that if you are currently married, there's a 90% chance that you will be living alone, either through divorce or the loss of your spouse, for an average of 9 years. So as women, we need to be ready for that time when we have to manage our own finances. And in a lot of relationships, women have basically given up any financial awareness or involvement to their spouse or partner. And so what happens if that person were to pass away and you don't know your financial status? That can create considerable stress. And if I can just share actually a terrible but good story, a good friend of mine, her father passed away, unfortunately, from a massive heart attack in the night, and she was only 10 years old, and the mother was left with 2 young children, and she absolutely thought she was broke. She went into a tailspin. Started, buying the cheapest cuts of meat she could find. She was so concerned. She didn't know anything about their finances, didn't know where the bank accounts were, didn't know who paid what bills, completely at a loss. Well, thankfully, with the help of a lawyer, they uncovered that her husband owned multiple retail properties, and she ended up being a multimillionaire. She had no idea. So, I mean, in her case, she actually came out the other side. But can you imagine, there are a lot of women who go through this experience and they are desperate. They are poor. And we know a lot of people today, as a result of COVID-19, are experiencing, the tragedy of the loss of a spouse of a parent, and they are finding themselves in a very vulnerable state. So that really covers it. But I just want to end with one thing, and that is that women really do have to save more than men, because of the fact that we are out of the workforce longer and we live longer. So we need to actually up our game to have the same standard of living in our future years.
Wow. Thank you, Tanya, for that. Yeah, I have a little story if I can share that. Just my parents, way back when my mom passed away when she was a fairly young lady. She didn't make it quite to retirement, 65 years old. But my dad then, when he reached his retirement and he was trying to deal with his RRSPs, and he did have an accountant, and he was putting money in, and he thought he did very well. He didn't have a lot of money. But when it was time to start pulling that money out, he come out of the bank in tears, and he says, "They're taking it from me." And my heart just sunk. And I went to his accountant and I said, "What do you do?" Like, I was looking to get educated. Like, what do you do? My dad's in tears. And she said, "Spend it," is what she said. Not that that's the best thing to do, but it's just getting educated so you know. And he says to me, "Sheryl," he says, "it's a good thing that mom passed away." He said, "First, because she wouldn't have had any money. We would have had to look after her financially. She wouldn't have had any money." So he realized that after the fact, and it's kind of taught me that, yes, I had to up my game and look after me. So you guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We got a few more minutes, but I've got a couple more questions. So Tanya, how do you decide which stocks to invest in right now? So many have dropped low. It seems like a good time to buy, because I would think they can only go up from here. Interesting question.
Well, thank you for the question. And as I said from the very outset, a financial advisor is the one who is going to take your money and invest it for you long term. I, of course, can comment on this in a general perspective. I'm not going to be giving you advice on what specific stocks to buy, but there's one thing for sure that I've read time and time again, is that we cannot time the market. You can't time the bottom, you can't time the top. There's far too many institutional investors in the stock market that they really control it. There's also a theory that the market is very efficient. So the price is the price based on current knowledge. What I can say is that over the last 100 years, the S&P 500, which is the index of the top 500 companies in America, has experienced an average growth rate of 9 to 11% over that entire. So if you look at the trend line, based on staying in the market, you're going to get good returns. So one of the biggest recommendations is that when you are invested, you stay invested for the long term, because your returns will ultimately depend on when you start, where you are on that trend, and how long you stay in it. I'm not going to get into all the details about, investor returns. There's some detail, and I would highly recommend reading The Common Sense Guide to Investing by John Bogle, B-O-G-L-E. He is the pioneer of index funds, and he has a very short, excellent read about how this needs to work for your benefit. So check out that book for some more insight, and of course, check in with a financial advisor so he can give you a better perspective on risk and return.
That's great. Thank you for that. That's perfect. We got another question in the chat from Jason. So what's a good amount to invest when you're just starting, and maybe where to invest it? Somebody that's new, maybe newbie, just starting out. Where would you start them out, Tanya?
Well, thanks, Jason, for that question. Again, I'll give you a general response. And, there is a known fact that the earlier you start and the more frequent you invest, the more wealth you will build over time. So I'm always encouraging young people, even if you're putting away $20 a paycheck, do something and invest it long term. And I really believe the tax-free savings account should be called the tax-free investment account, because that's where you're going to get your maximum tax advantages if you use that account for long-term investing. The other point I want to mention, again, there's been a ton of books and podcasts all about this, and I encourage you to do your own research. This is really important. But there is a lot of recommendations that if you're just starting out small, you don't really need active management. And what I mean by that is you don't need to buy into an investment that has a high fee for the active management of a portfolio of funds, such as a mutual fund. You can invest in an index fund or an exchange traded fund, which basically follow the index, like the S&P 500 I talked about. You can invest money there, follow the market with very minimal fees. It's very important that you understand the cost of investing. A lot of mutual funds have a very high fee on an annual basis, whether you are making money or losing money. And that cuts into your long-term returns. So again, I'm going to mention that book, The Common Sense Guide to Investing. That will give you so much clarity on investing in index funds, because John Bogle is the pioneer of the Vanguard index funds, the very first in the world. It started in 1974 and consistently have outperformed, index funds have outperformed mutual funds 90% of the time. So it's very hard to pick winners. You're better to follow an index, especially if you just have a small amount of money to start with.
Well, gee, thank you for that, Tanya. I hope that makes some sense there, Jason, for you. We can always reach out, or you can always reach out to Tanya. I'm sure she would love to touch base with any one of you. And we have another one from Marnie. Have you read Tony Robbins' book, The Money Master Game, Tanya?
Hey, Marnie. Yeah, Tony Robbins has come out with a couple of good books. I mean, that guy is amazing because, I think he interviewed like 150 of the wealthiest people to create that, Money Master the Game book. I know it's a huge volume, 1,000 odd pages. So I've read some of the Cole's notes. I've seen Tony speak online. And I know he has a new one out right now, a relatively new book. So I think, the thing about finance books, there's a lot of insight you can get across so many different authors, and I could recommend, many, many books. And of course, you can get them in audio version, so you can listen to them on your walks. I just encourage everyone to get and read personal finance books, especially from the library where it's free. That's what I call being FinSmart. So challenge yourself to read a book every few months, every 6 months at the max, and learn, because your needs, your personal finance needs will evolve as you, change your life cycle from young adult to middle years to middle age. And the best thing you can take advantage of when it comes to your finances is time. And we certainly know that time just keeps passing us by. So don't wait. Start today. Let me just say, there is no shame and there is no blame when it comes to your finances. A lot of this is beyond our control. It's also, cultural. We live in a consumer society and we have marketing messages coming at us like every second. So I just would encourage you to get started, get learning, and from here forward, you can have a very positive path. And it's really just 1 or 2 small changes will create some very large compounded benefits over time. So nothing like today to get started.
That's perfect. Yeah. Nothing like any day is a good day to get started, for sure. Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, Marnie, for mentioning Tony Robbins. He's one of my favorite people. So yeah, we'll get on to that personal finance novels. That's a good idea. Thank you, Tanya. And definitely going to the library I've utilized the library lots for my audiobooks. I just love it. And maybe Tanya can put down the after in the chat for us, what she recommended, because I didn't actually write it down. I was just too intently listening. So now I guess there's no more questions. If there is, please throw them in there. But you know how you can reach out, and Tanya's going to tell you how you can reach out to her, and we can put that in the chat as well later. But Tanya, how do we get a hold of you?
Thanks, Cheryl, again for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I want to give you kudos, as a health coach, to recognize that financial wellness is part of our overall wellness. And there's some leading research about this topic that's really come out only in the last 3 to 4 years. So I want to thank you for acknowledging this as being important to our overall health and for inviting me here today. So kudos to you. Obviously, when you need health coaching, Cheryl's the girl. In order to reach me, if you want to talk about financial health and financial wellness, you can go to my website at finsmart.ca, finsmart.ca, and you can get my contact information there, sign up for my blog and other tips that I have to send out, and call me. I'm available to chat with people. I'm offering a complimentary 45-minute counseling session for anyone who is on the call right now. And it's just getting started, and some of that is really just reducing that sense of fear and overwhelm. So again, no judgment coming from me. I want to help you. I want to I have a mission to provide my clients with clarity around their finances, which is the whole financial awareness piece, mastery, which is helping you become financially prepared. And I want to help transform your life, and become financially well. So here's to your overall wellness, people. Thank you so much, Cheryl, again for having me. And I'll look forward to connecting with people offline.
Sweet. Tanya, do we have time for one more question? It's my son that just jumped on there with a question. Can we do one more?
Of course.
Awesome. So is it worth trying to power pay debt with extra money or smaller debts, is what he's saying?
Sorry, your son's name again was?
Pat.
Awesome question. And it's funny, I really don't tend to give specific financial advice without knowing the big picture. It's really, really important to know the whole state of your finances. But, there are 2 methods for tackling debt. One is called the avalanche method. So you deal with the most expensive, biggest debt, and then you get down to the smaller, least expensive. And then the other method is the snowball method. So you're starting with the small debt, get those out of the way, and then you roll into the bigger debts. Really, the best advice I can give you is the higher the cost of the debt, the interest rate, that's the one you should be tackling. And of course, we all hear about credit card debt. And, when you pay off your credit card debt, a lot of people, again, don't think about it this way, but when you pay off credit card debt, you are getting the highest return on your money. So if your credit card interest rate is 20% and you're paying that off, that's a 20% return. And in fact, it's actually higher because you have to pay off that money with after-tax dollars. So you take into effect that you have to pay tax on that money. So if anything, tackle that credit card debt, and please do not carry credit card debt. That is definitely something I ask my clients to avoid as much as possible, because it is something that is incredibly expensive.
Whoa, thank you. I hope you answered that question. I hope that question was answered good there, Pat, and I'm sure you can reach out to Tanya because she would love to hear from you too. So anyways, you guys, I'm just going to say thank you so much. And you know how to get a hold of me. I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn. My phone number and my webpage is on Facebook. And for anybody else, I will get Tanya to put in too in the comments, her webpage and my webpage. I'll put on there too. So you can just click if you want to get a hold of each one of us. And again, I also have complimentary coaching sessions. They're 45 minutes to an hour. So reach out, get yourself some help with myself or Tanya. And we have lots and lots of resources to help you guys. So I just want to say thank you, Tanya, again. And this is going to help us through some of our rough times there over the next little bit. So I end my calls with a heart hug. So this is my grounding and kind of some stress relieving stuff to do on your own, in your own personal space, and share it with your loved ones. So you put your left hand on your right shoulder, your right hand under your rib, and you breathe in. So breathe in with me and let it out through your nose. Let's do one more. We'll breathe in and let it out through your mouth. There you go, you guys. Try and do that for a few seconds every day, especially the ones that are by themselves. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, you guys have a great, great weekend. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.